Well, welcome to Richie's Roost, Shaco, Mississippi. Beautiful morning, quiet. I got a few serious things to talk to you about this morning. It's going to be kind of loose and disjointed, and I hope my feeling of upset won't come through too heavy. And I don't want to sound like an old man who had to walk barefoot to school every morning in the snow, uphill both ways, going and coming. But I just started thinking the other day about some things that are going on in the country, things that we used to do and be able to do and can't do anymore. But I believe we can. And we had talked about before, we're going to talk about some taxes, and that's what we're going to talk about this morning and next week. But a couple of things I guess I need to chat with you about. I'm going to give you just a couple of things to kind of put in the background and keep in the back of your mind as we go through this thing. I want to talk about 4 leaders we have in this country. Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader in the Senate, was sent to the Senate in 1999. He's been there for 23 years. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, went to the House in 1987. So she's been there 35 years. Mitch McConnell, who is the minority leader in the Senate, went to the Senate in 1985. So he's been there 37 years. Joe Biden went to the Senate in 1973. So he's been there 49 years, including the couple of years, a year and a half he's been in the presidency. These are career people. And I think that's part of our problem. Another statistic you might think about, probably already know some of these, maybe you know all of them, but I didn't. There are approximately 2,711,000 federal employees in the United States, making the U.S. government the largest employer in the world. 2,711,000 people. And the way some things sort of happen is like Department of Education, for example. Department of Education split off from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in 1980 under President Carter. The Department of Education has 4,400 people working in it, and each state has a Department of Education. The Department of Education budget's about $68 billion. Well, some of that gets sent to the states, I know that, but we're talking about what in the world does the state Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, do with 4,400 people? I don't see where the education system has improved that much since 1980. When we have kids graduating from high school that can't read the diplomas. Just keep those in the back of your mind as a sort of a backdrop to what I want to be talking about today and next week. Folks in Oklahoma, I just happened to run up on this. Good, solid people. And they have an outfit there called the Oklahoma Policy Institute. And they came up with this short thing that they call the characteristics of an effective tax system. The characteristics of an effective tax system. The first being fairness. Taxpayers in similar financial conditions should pay similar amounts in taxes. Fair. You hear everybody in Congress talking about everybody or some people paying their fair share. And everybody ought to pay their fair share, I guess. The only problem is I've never heard a number put on the fair share. But politicians can make it sound so wonderful. The corporations need to pay their fair share. Well, what is the fair share number for them, for the individuals? Also, I pay my taxes. I have to go and pay a CPA to figure my taxes. We'll get into that in a minute. But then somebody else can run up a big tax bill and go, you see on television all the time, if you owe the IRS, come and see us and we'll see what we can do about getting that reduced. If they do that, then that's not fair. I pay mine. That's another little backdrop we want to talk about later. Adequacy is the second thing, second characteristic. That means that the system must provide enough revenue to meet the basic needs of the government. Well, if the tax system now provides enough revenue to meet the basic needs of the country, why are we so much in debt? Why do we need to continue to borrow so much money? Should we raise taxes? You don't find many up there in favor of that, although there's some movement now to raise taxes this year. The third characteristic is transparency. That means that taxpayers and leaders can easily find information about the tax system and how the tax money is used. I defy you to easily find information about the tax system all in one concise place and how the tax money is used. The next characteristic is the administrative ease. That means that the tax system is not too complicated or too costly for either the taxpayer or the tax collectors. The rules are well known and fairly simple. Forms are not too complicated. The state, meaning the country, state here and country are synonymous. The state can conduct an audit in a fair and efficient manner. We'll get into some of that next week. And the cost of collecting a tax should be very small in relation to the amount collected. Now, if you were to be charged, I'm talking to you now, to describe the worst taxing system for a free nation, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with one worse than the one we have in the United States based on those characteristics that I just mentioned. You know, fairness. What's fair? Adequacy, enough revenue, transparency, easily find information, and simplified tax systems and tax forms. fairness in audit. But the worst part about the one we've got now is that we're not free people. We talk about it, and we claim to be free folks. But you're under the control of the federal government, whether you like it or not, whether you will agree to it or not, whether you think you are or not. You are, in fact, under the control of the federal government. The Internal Revenue Service, without a warrant, they have a standing warrant for everybody. They can come in and demand everything you've got to be shown to them. Possibility of not including your physical being. I want to see your checkbook. I want to look at your last 3 years of deposit slips, the last 3 years of expenditures, last 3 years of withdrawals. And you are presumed guilty until you are proved innocent. That's not right in a free society. That's the wrong kind of system. And we'll talk about that next week, too. I want to see all that stuff for 3 years, and if I find anything I don't like in there, we can go back 7 years, which means you better keep records for 7 years. And if they find evidence of fraud, that 7 years is not the limit anymore. Income tax used to be just a kind of an afterthought and pain in the neck. The first big case that started all this auditing, I think, as I recall, if I know my history right, started back in the 30s when they were looking for a reason to put Al Capone in jail. And he was convicted of tax evasion and put in jail. Al Capone, the famous gangster in Chicago. And it's gotten pretty regular with other folks from then on. They are now also talking about doubling the size of the IRS from about, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000 people to 166,000 people. They're way behind in their audits. They're way behind in all of the paperwork. And they feel like that additional agents can help them generate some more revenue, and it probably will. But next week we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about something else. I've rambled on here long enough right now. You'll understand I'm not too exactly pleased with what's been going on in this country for the last 75, 80 years, as long as I can remember. But we can be our great country again, where cars can be left unlocked, houses can be left unlocked, streets are safe to walk in, children can play without fear. We can do that, but it's going to take an awful lot of changes, and it's going to take an awful lot of people to change. We got to put the right people in there to change it. Because in the final analysis, it's really not their fault that the system's like it is. It's our fault for putting those people where they are. And they're more interested in careers and power than they are in running an efficient, fair country, happy country. So let's get the right folks in. And with that, I'm going to put everything else off until next week. And we're going to talk about my experience with the IRS and an audit, and a couple of other possibilities of audits. I've had some other folks send me their stories. May be interesting to you. So, have a good week. And I'm Jim Ritchie. I will see you again, hopefully next week.